Good afternoon, everyone. My name is John Quincy. I think I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Ways and Means Committee to order. I'm joined by Councilmember Johnson, Bender, and Yang, and we're a quorum of this committee, so we can continue. I know Councilmember Glidden is on other city business at the moment, and I'm sure we'll be joined by Councilmember Palmisano in a few moments. Let's go through the consent agenda if we can really quickly. There's 4 items from the city attorney's office. They represent a legal settlement, amending the master agreement for legal services agreement between the city and Lockridge Grindle Nowen, amending a resolution to correct the amount of the 2014 Minneapolis Downtown Improvement District Grant Award, and authorizing execution of a 3-year contract with MCS Litigation Support. The Civil Rights, is this a department or your committee, Mr. Councilmember Yang? Is a summer clerkship program and summer of civil rights event, accepting $4,500 from Minnesota Justice Foundation, and authorizing acceptance of $1,000 from Emmett Carson Fund, and increase the revenue and expense appropriations for that event. The Convention Center is bringing forward emergency medical services, amending a contract with Life Tech Services. The Department of Information Technology is bringing forward a number of items. The first is application for free wireless community account for Lowry Tower. Executing necessary contract documents with Sageti and USA for a 3-year period for Workforce Director System application software. Amending a contract with ShotSpotter, increasing the amount by $300,000 for a new total amount not to exceed $650,640. Extending contract with the following vendors through September 30th. For technology professional services master contracts with Farstad, Dahl, and Farstad US and Dahl Consulting, and executing a 3-year contract with Gartner for subscription-based research and related services. Digital Health Department software application, assignment of Garrison Enterprises and contract to assigning that contract to Digital Health Department to providing the software for emergency response tracking system by Reg Services. And let's see, we have executing all necessary contract documents with the following vendors, provide services for city's broadcast message systems. This is with Gov Delivery and Swift Reach related to the broadcast messaging systems. And then the executive committee is bringing forward the tentative agreement with Electrical Technicians Unit, represented by IBEW Local 292, AFL-CIO for 2 contract periods. And then from the Community Development and Regulatory Services Committee, the Emergency Solutions Grant, otherwise known as ESG, Homelessness Prevention and Rapid Rehousing Services, authorizing our staff to reallocate the $36,330 from Minnesota Council of Churches to a new contract with St. Stephen's Human Services. Let's see, the 16th item on the consent agenda is the Job Fairs 2014. And 17th item is the Traffic Management Services for TCF Bank. This is authorizing contracts for the University of Minnesota to receive up to $75,000 to provide traffic management services for the bank stadium during football games, obviously. Elliott Park Life Sciences. This is considering resolution placing property assessed clean energy. These are the PACE special assessments against Elliott Park Life Sciences property and property assessed for Miller Investments, LLP, as well as Longfellow Market, LLC, to all be eligible for the assessments for the PACE program. The Health, Environment, and Community Engagement Committee is bringing forward the authorizing our officers to apply for a 3-year grant with the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Office of Healthy Homes and Lead Hazard Control, and authorizing application for a 3-year grant from the Office of Minority Health for Health and Human Services grant application, and then authorizing acceptance of U.S. Department of Justice Bureau of Justice Assistance, the 2014 Edward Byrne Memorial Justice Assistance Grant Award. That's going to be run through Hennepin County for $275,540. And then authorizing a contract with the University of Minnesota College of Veterinary Medicine for $22,595 to receive canine vet care through June of 2015. Transportation and Public Works Committee will be bringing forward a number of execution of contracts for the Central Corridor Green Line LRT project, and then authorizing execution of an overpass agreement with BNSF Railway, and this is the St. Anthony Parkway Bridge. I just want to check with the clerk real quick. Is this the correct amount for these? Or this is correct? Okay. Then that will continue as forward with acceptance. And then accepting a single bid for with Contech Engineered Solutions in the amount of $74,500 to furnish and deliver grit chamber to the Surface Water and Sewer Division. Those are all the items, I think, on the consent agenda. There's 27 items, and I'm happy to move all those consent items for approval. Any comments or questions from any committee members? Councilmember Yang?
Oh, go ahead.
We're going to let Councilmember Yang ask his question first, and then we can come back to the clerk. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. Really quickly, for item number 5, you had asked that question, and the reason why it wasn't referred from public safety was just because they just didn't get that in time on our schedule.
Okay.
For item number 7, I just want to say a few words about that. I think it's fantastic that we are doing this for Lowry Tower, which is in Ward 5, and just to provide that opportunity for the folks who live there to access the internet is just a wonderful opportunity for the folks. And for item number 9, with ShotSpotter increasing that amount, sorely needed in Ward 5 and Ward 4 and the 4th precinct altogether. And so I support that tremendously.
Great. I'm sure that's very helpful. Yes, was that you, Councilmember Johnson? I'm sorry.
What's that?
Was that you clicking in?
Oh.
Okay, I got it. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a quick comment on item number 20, Longfellow Market. This property is not in my ward, but it is a project that I helped work on and is very near and dear to the Longfellow community and used by a lot of residents in my ward. And this weekend they celebrated their grand opening, and we're all very excited by having this asset and amenity in the neighborhood. And I want to just give a special thanks to our CDRS committee and to the St. Paul Port Authority for their work in helping close this funding gap, this gap that was really came close to sinking this project. And if it wasn't for our partners and the city and the St. Paul Port Authority stepping up, we wouldn't have this tremendous store on Lake Street, which is really helping with the turnaround of East Lake Street and the revitalization of the neighborhood. So I just wanted to say a special thanks to everyone who was involved in making this happen.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments, questions? Yes. I'm sorry. What do you got, Lisa?
Finance Department notified me that some needs to be modified and that item needs to be pulled from the agenda.
Actually pulled from, or do you want to send forward a recommendation?
Number 12, the IT item. Sandy, do you have?
I'm sorry, Ms. Christensen, should we be pulling this?
Yes, Chair Quincy, in discussions with the affected departments, we recommend that we pull this item pending further discussions with the vendor on some service improvement.
Okay, very good. Well, we'll do that. Well, so I moved all the consent agenda items, and that'll be with the exception of item 12, which we'll just remove from the agenda. All those in favor of those items, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, those items carry. And I think we can get now to our exciting presentation, normally from Ms. Christensen, but it looks like Ms. Green's going to join us.
Yes. It's weird. Chair Quincy, committee members,
That's it. There you go.
seem a little weird facing the wrong direction. It's like, oh, okay, thank you. I will be bringing before you today the operating budget process for the city of Minneapolis. It will be a summary, so it's not all inclusive, but it includes the most parts that we think that we should share with committee members and council members. First is the process. This is just the items that I will be going over. The vision, the values, the goals, and the strategic direction. Capital improvement budget development, capital assets, request system, operating budget assumptions, the mayor's recommended budget, the maximum property tax levies, truth in taxation, and the city council budget development and adoption. All of these are just processes that the city has in order to make the operating budget flow a little bit easier and have different phases within the year, because it seems like all year that we're actually doing budgets. You will see that I actually have capital improvement budget development actually on here, but you need to know that information when you're developing your operating budget, so that is the reason why you will see why that's on the agenda. The vision, the values, the goals, and the strategic direction. All of the council members actually participated in this. This probably was one of the first activities that council members participated in. The city engages in this citywide on every 4 years. The city actually goes through this to determine what the city goals will actually be for the city and what the strategic direction is. This is what's used in order to help departments to develop their business plans, and we use those business plans in order to help the departments to build their budgets. And that's how ultimately the mayor makes her decisions as to what programs will be included in the budget, and then at the end of the budgeting process, then council members actually make the final adoption of the actual, in this case, it will be 2015 budget. The capital improvement budget. The city has a 5-year capital improvement budget plan where departments prepare the current year's budget, which will be 2015, the current year's budget, and also 4 years of additional budget. So we have a 5-year plan. Only the first year is what's actually, they have appropriation in order, departments have appropriation in order to spend, and the other years is just a part of the plan so that we can allocate resources and we know what we have commitments for. Each year we go through this, so each year another year is added on to the budgeting process for the capital improvement, but you will be receiving additional information on that on the 23rd, I believe. On June 23rd, the capital improvement budget will actually be coming before you. The capital asset request system, that actually really is the operating, is a part of the operating budget. This is something that the finance department, with the help of Ms. Christensen, I was about to call her Sandy, with the help of Ms. Christensen, it was a way of coordinating all the city needs that we have so that we are being proactive and not just in 1 year have a fire truck that's coming on, and we wasn't even expecting a $700,000 truck to be coming on, onto the revenues that the resources that we have in order to allocate. So this is a way to project what type of expenses, what are the needs that the departments will be engaging in or will need in order to be able to really to function at the same level that they're functioning now for the most part, because we use the program in order to as a replacement plan. We do have some new pieces of equipment that comes on as well. Also, you might have some new software that departments may bring forth too. We also wanted to use this program as a way to have a collaboration between the departments I mean, if you have two pieces of software that's really similar to each other, maybe we should be coordinating those efforts and, maybe select one software as opposed to multiple software that's really similar to each other. As well as if one department is going to be bringing this piece of software online in 2015 and another department maybe in 2016, maybe we can have some collaboration and maybe only do it in 2016, especially if we have some pressures when we're trying to balance the budget in order to help make some of those decisions for the mayor and for council members. Also, when we're developing the budget, we actually don't go into it kind of like blindsided or with our eyes closed. We actually look at the trends that we have for revenue so that we can know what type of resources that we perceive that we will have available. Ms. Christensen also brought to you already the revenue presentation, so you kind of get a little bit more probably already know a little bit more about the revenues that are out there. Also, we look at the known factors if you're going to have increases in grants or maybe increases, or not even only increase, it could be a decrease that we might have, especially, or even if we know that we're going to have different type of facilities that's coming online that's going to actually bring the city additional revenues. So we try and look at all of that piece of information, and it's not only finance and property services that's actually doing this. We're working with the departments in order to come up with a good assumption for the revenues. Then that takes us down into the expenses. And with the expenses, the way we being finance and property services, what we actually look at is we look at what we would call the current service level, meaning the department budget that the departments would have in 2014. And we try and project how much we think they would need in 2015 in order to do the same level of service. Of course, because of most of department's budget is related to salaries and benefits or personnel costs. What we do is we look at the contracts that are already settled in 2015, and we would put that assumption on the salaries. And we do try and come up with a citywide one, just because it's for budgeting purposes. But we do look at that. In years past, we've had some instances whereas we asked if the contract was not settled, we have placed a 0% increase on that portion on those contracts that were not settled. Also, for the non-personnel, for the past few years, we have tried to keep the non-personnel flat. Of course, flat isn't always flat. It isn't always 0%. You can have some contracts, so when Ways and Means is making decisions about contracts that may be over multiple years that has an inflationary factor in there, we have to take those things into consideration. We don't just automatically put those dollars amount into the department's budget because sometimes we are not aware that that's out there. But we do allow the departments an opportunity to come to finance and the mayor's, when we're in the mayor's phase, and say we need 2% more in this particular contract because we already have an agreement with this particular vendor, or we have a way that we can streamline a process that we're actually doing now. So departments do have an opportunity to request additional funding in their department budget from the current service level. And those are the decisions that the mayor as well as the council will ultimately make. Okay, so the first phase that we actually go through when we're going through the budgeting process after we've gone through the assumption, after we've already given the departments what we would call a preliminary budget or a target budget, it might be a term that you're more familiar with. The mayor actually, for the past few years, of course we only had this mayor for this is her first year, but for the past few years the city has been budgeting based on what we call program budgeting. That's where we don't just allocate a $5 million budget to a department. We ask that if you have a $5 million budget, what are the activities or what are the programs that you're going to be providing for the citizens of Minneapolis, or for the internal services? What are the internal services that the city as well as the citizens are going to be receiving for this $5 million? So we do ask departments to break out their budget based on programs. Once those programs are submitted, and as I said, you would have the departments will have an opportunity to have some enhancements within those budget, and that will be the contracts that I just mentioned, as well as if they have any new type of programs that they think will be beneficial in order to participate in. Once that information is submitted to the mayor actually have the departments to come in and, justify the reason why they need the same level of funding that they've received in the past, or this basically almost never happens, but if there was an opportunity to reduce those budget to what we've been calling right sizing, hopefully we would have that conversation as well. If each year the departments has been spending less money than the appropriation that has been allocated to them, hopefully they would come up with ideas on ways of reducing that. We do know that a lot or some of those savings has actually been because of, we've had some personnel savings of just not being able to get positions filled. So we're not just saying that we don't have, that all departments are over budgeted, because that's definitely not the case. But we do want to have that discussion every year so that we make sure that we try and get the department's budget at the right size. So and if the departments are making any requests for additional funding, or if they're asking for an enhancement, those are the type of discussions that's taking place when the mayor is having her discussions with the departments. After the mayor has her discussions, she takes into account the CARS program, she takes into account the capital improvement program and the operating program that's available and the resources that we have, and she makes some very tough decisions in order to determine which programs will be included as a part of her operating as well as her overall budget. Once the mayor has made her decisions, then we move forth and she presents her budget to council, and that's normally done by August 15th. So by August 15th, the council will have a presentation from the mayor presenting her 2015 budget. Once we go through that phase, then we go to the next phase, what we call the Ways and Means phase, and that's where departments actually come in, and during that time, all council members can actually participate in those Ways and Means, what we used to call budget hearings, can participate in those budget hearings, and that's where the same information or information that has been provided to the mayor is also provided to Ways and Means and council members. And once we get through all of those budget hearings, then we have what we call a budget markup. During budget markup, that's where the Ways and Means has an opportunity to make changes to the mayor's recommended budget. What normally happens is you stay within the allocation that the mayor has actually proposed. And the next slide will kind of explain kind of why we actually have to do that. So those changes are actually moved forth. And then what happens is after the mayor and then the council makes their recommend, then it moves on from the Ways and Means section, it moves on to the council adopted section. I actually kind of got ahead of myself, but I'm like all excited about this.
I know, I can tell you're excited about this.
budget.
Let's just pause for a moment.
So what we would have is the next slide, we'll talk about the maximum property tax levy. When the mayor actually making her recommendation, she's also looking at how much property taxes would be needed in order to fill any gaps based on the revenues that we have from other sources. And then once she has that, then she makes a recommendation on how much she thinks the property tax should increase, remain the same, or remain flat, or decrease from the prior year. And once she makes that recommendation, normally that's what she makes in her recommendation, and then it goes forth to what we would call a maximum property tax levy.
Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Board of Estimate and Taxation is exactly the not committee, but the institution that actually approves the property taxes for the city. That normally happens, in the past, it used to happen on September 15th, and I actually was going to say that, but it happened now with this past legislation. We have to have the maximum property tax levy voted on or approved by September 30th. The County is actually the one that sends out the notices. I'm off on to the next slide for the truth in taxation. The county is responsible for sending the notices out to let homeowners and property taxpayers know exactly how much their property tax is going to be for next year, and that those dollar amounts would be based on the maximum. And I say that because when you get later, you can actually, just because the maximum is what's voted on, that's not necessarily the amount that council has to vote on in December. Those notices actually go out. We're required by state law that we have to allow taxpayers an opportunity to comment on those levies. They have that, citizens actually have that opportunity to vote on those levies when we're developing the property tax levy amounts. And also, as a part of the budgeting process, we also have a time that that citizens can actually come in and make comments on the recommendation that the mayor has made for her budget, as well as any potential changes because at this point in time, changes have not been made by Ways and Means, but these are considerations that the Ways and Means Department would actually take into consideration when making adjustments to the mayor's recommended budget. What normally would happen at this time is that when the notices go out, we have to have the date that we actually plan on adopting the budget on the notice date, but we also put a supplement in the notices that go out to let the citizens know that we actually are going to allow them another opportunity to come in and voice their concern, like if they are not in agreement with where the property taxes are, or not in agreement with some of the programs that's included in the budget, or would like to see additional programs included in the budget. So citizens and property taxpayers have an opportunity to comment on the budget that the mayor has made and try to make changes or help the Ways and Means and council to make decisions about what they would actually like to see included in the 2015 budget. We actually also have a date set for that as well, and that date is November 18th. And that will, like I said, that will be included in the truth and taxation notice that's sent out by the county in mid-November, late November. So, I've already told you a good bit of this, but I will repeat it. Once we get to the council phase of the budget, that's when you actually have the departments to actually come in and present their budgets. Then after the departments have presented, then the Ways and Means have an opportunity to make adjustment to the mayor's budget, and that's after the comments that have been received by the citizens. Once that phase has, all that's been taken into consideration, then that's when, after Ways and Means ratifies or make their changes, then that budget is sent forth to City Council. When that budget is sent forth to City Council as a whole, and that's the December 4th date, when those any changes, so the one last time, council members have an opportunity to make changes to the 2015 budget. So, and that will be changes based on not just the mayor's recommendation, but any changes that Ways and Means has actually made to the mayor's recommendation. And then after that, you have an opportunity for citizens to provide another level of comment. So citizens or taxpayers actually make comments at the December 4th budget adoption meeting. And then after that, you take that into consideration, and then the budget is hopefully adopted.
Oh, it will be adopted. We have to do that.
Yes. So important dates that I think you should keep in mind is the maximum property tax levies hearings, and that's the one that's before you actually have the maximum that's going to be set, and that's where taxpayers have an opportunity to come in and make their comment about the maximum property tax that's being proposed. So that's August 27th. The maximum.
Can I just ask one quick question, Ms.
Sure.
Green? And maybe this is Mr. Carpenter. Is the maximum property tax levies, is that in the Ways and Means Committee, or is that at the Board of Estimate and Taxation?
Councilmember Quincy, that's at the Board of Estimate and Taxation.
Okay.
The maximum property tax levies is actually adopted, so to speak, on September 10th. And then the public comments, which I've already told you, is November 18th, and budget adoption is December 4th. With that, I'll stand for any questions that you might have with my rambling.
Thank you for that, especially for outlining those important dates. I just need to reiterate, of course, that the city budget is a working document, but we have to have a budget to go forth with each year. I think in the recent past, we've established this CARS program, which I think has really leveled the predictions of what our expenses are going to be as we look out in 5-year increments, as well as the CLIck process that we're all familiar with. Those have been very helpful tools in identifying and giving us a 5-year range of what we're needing to do some of our things. They're also very much program-based, but they're also values and guided by our strategic directions and goals that we've all adopted. And these really set, as Ms. Green alluded to, the business plans for our departments. And just always take an opportunity to compliment our departments and how thoughtful they are and how long-range thinking they are and how proactive they are as they establish their budget requests, which go to the mayor's office. But none of that happens without the finance department being involved, because we need you guys to mind the store. We want to make sure that every expenditure we're making this year will have an effect on what's happening in the future years, and we need to take that into account as we do some of that long-range planning. So with the help of the finance team and our professional staff, I'm sure the mayor will be able to spend all of her summer doing all of the fun things that we expect her to do, so she can present for us at the council level ways to perfect her budget ideas and move to a final adoption in December. Were there any other thoughts or questions or comments on the process in the presentation? Go ahead, Councilmember Yang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the expense of just sounding stupid, and I will just say that
We're having the meeting.
it might sound stupid. I'm going to use item number 9 as an example. So, it was ShotSpotter. Initially within public safety, the police department came to us and asked for an allocation of a certain amount of money along with the JET program. And at some point after agenda setting, they spoke with you all, and you all said that, it would just be an operating expense from the budget. And, I was a little bit lost in that, and I'm wondering if Ms. Christensen or you can explain to me, what it is and, why they would, I guess in this situation, the action is to amend a contract, but, in the situation where, there was already money in the budget, can you explain that to me just to give me a better sense of it, just because sometimes some of these things just fly through you and you're trying to figure these things out, but, it'd be great to just get a better understanding of it.
I'm going to ask Ms. Christensen to field that if that's appropriate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Quincy. Councilmember Yang. It's interesting that you should bring up that particular agenda item, because following agenda setting, we did have additional conversations with both the police department as well as the IT department to further look at how the contract increase would be funded. And as we all know, you can't, there's always choices to be made when we're making expenditure changes. Something has to give. And as it turns out, the funding mechanism for the increase in the ShotSpotter for the capital portion being the installation this year is actually going to be utilizing some other budgetary savings within the police department to fund that. And similarly, in the IT department, there are some other budgetary savings that they're needing to reallocate to fund the maintenance of this contract in calendar 2014. When we look forward into 2015 with the extension of the contract, we will be needing to dip into what otherwise may have been dollars available for other new items, as Ms. Green alluded to earlier, that when we have multi-year contracts, they do become one of the first items on the table for funding in the subsequent year. So we've been able to fund it in the current calendar year through current budget savings, but going forward, it would require an increase in their baseline.
Oh, that's a pretty complicated way. Does that help you at all? What we try to, I think in general, what we want to avoid doing is reopening a budget in the middle of the year without understanding what the end of the year is going to look like and what the beginning of the next year is going to look like. So we're really saying, are we able to do this adjustment, whether it's needed or to what extent it's needed? Does it require an additional appropriation, which is requiring us to take an action to say where are we going to get that funding? Or is it something that can be done in the existing programmed budget? And if it can be done in the existing program budget, that's what we want to do, if there's a business case to be made. And that's the things that are decided at the committee level. Is this appropriate? But then there's the ways and means process, so it's really act as a double check for the whole system. Can we do this? Can we afford to do this now? What are the ramifications going forward? Is that a good policy decision? Is that a good approach? And those are the things that we operate and decide on individual case-by-case basis. But in general, I think our structure is, if it's existing budget, that they have that opportunity to spend it as wisely as they can. But if there's a business case to be made, then it might be appropriate to reopen and look for a different funding source for a different appropriation. I think there's been several examples already this year. Some of them are in the police department. Others could be in other department operations. But it really helps the department heads focus in on, is this something that we need to do? Is this something we can do? Is this something we should do? And all of those are going to have financial implications as we stay within our operating budget. So that's the gist and philosophy of how we approach it. But when there's a great idea out there and it needs to be done, then we're always going to be able to figure a way to do that. But not at the expense, and what choice are we going to make in a different priority budget is how it could come to be. So far, we've been pretty fortunate that our spending has been planned. It's been executed well, and when we have opportunities for savings on significant capital budgets, we're able to reallocate those to fill more needs. That's the idea.
So departments are working pretty closely with finance ed.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say if they're not, that's when we're going to have a problem. Because if they have anticipated, I think if the finance department says, how can we help you achieve what you're wanting to achieve? That's their operating approach, but they need to do it within the existing structure of the budget. Is that helpful? Good. Any additional comments, questions? Good. Then I will move to receive and file this report. Thank you for Ms. Green. We're going to see a lot of each other in the coming months. I just wanted to point out that the budget hearings have been scheduled and should be on everybody's calendars. These are, as we talked about earlier, these are individual budget hearings. These are departments coming to explain what's in the mayor's presented budget and an opportunity for the full council to ask questions of that. But we don't take any specific action on any of those hearings, so no quorum is needed. It's a little more informal, but we're trying to stick to a schedule because we have a lot of departments. So if you can do any advance questions to department heads and with the finance department, it will help those budget hearings go much more smoothly. And then we get to markup, and a little change this year. It's not just the Ways and Means Committee that is actually doing what we call the budget committee work, where we're doing final markup. That's the opportunity for the full council to serve on the budget committee, and that is at the call of the chair, so it's whenever I get around to it. We'll get to it, though. We'll make sure everybody has a participation and has an opportunity to make the budget a reality. So that being said, I think our meeting is adjourned.